Episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 20, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Also, become a program sponsor today. Get your gear, products, merchandise, or services out to the general public. Program sponsorships include a custom written script to advertise your business to its fullest potential to get the results you're looking for. To learn more, email me today at thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. Today, we welcome Kristal Kent. Kristal is a veteran of the United States Army who served with the 256th Combat Support Hospital. After being medically discharged due to injuries, Kristal stayed on with her Army unit, volunteering for 2.5 years as the Family Readiness Group Leader. Kristal also worked in social services for 20 years in a variety of roles, from patient care coordinator to benefits coordinator. She also worked with veterans and even assisted individuals with intellectual and mental health disabilities. As a veteran living with fibromyalgia, Kristal identified the lack of support, healthcare options, and education for those living with fibromyalgia, especially veterans. To address the gaps in healthcare and community support, Kristal created the initiatives the Fibromyalgia Pain Chronicles and Veteran Voices for Fibromyalgia to address the inequities in healthcare. She also engages in VA policy and legislative advocacy to emote positive change for those living with fibromyalgia. Kristal previously served as a board of trustee for the Fibromyalgia Care Society of America, the WeGo Health Patient Advisory Board, along with participating on the Cleveland Clinic's patient panel. Kristal is also a member of the Society for Participatory Medicine, WeGo Health's Patient Leader Network, a co-op member of Savvy Cooperative, and a member of the American Legion. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Kristal Kent. Kristal, how are you?
All is well. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. When you have a resume a mile long, I need to condense it a little bit. You've done so much in your life. You've done so much in your career. You've inspired so many throughout your career. And we are honored to have you here today to tell a little bit about your story and pretty much inspire others to begin their own advocacy journey on whatever that journey may lead them on. So we certainly do appreciate your time that you are giving us today because we know it will definitely add a lot of value to the lives of everyday people.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate the really nice intro. I'm listening to it going, oh, who's that person? Oh, he's talking about me. Okay. But, sometimes I forget just in general, my journey in life, starting at a young age and how it's, basically, I don't know if I want to use the word prepared, but has led me down the path that I'm at now. And if it wasn't for all the personal and professional experiences, I don't know if I would be in the place that I am now, much less if I would be able to emote positive changes for the different communities that I'm supporting and representing.
Now, I know you've had a phenomenal career. I mean, it's taken you all over the country, and even to Capitol Hill, where laws are made. But before we get way out ahead of our skis, I want to introduce you to my listeners and to really anybody out there today that is tuning in, even for the first time. Uh, who you are as a person. Who is Kristal Kent, and where are you from, and where did you grow up?
So I hail from Berea, Ohio, outside of Cleveland. Grew up in Berea, went to Baldwin Wallace University in Berea. After college, I went into the Army. So kind of Berea born and bred, representing all of my peeps in Berea, in Cleveland, Ohio. So yeah, that's where I grew up. Pretty small town, typical, running the streets with your friends until the street lights came on, drinking water from the water hose type of childhood. And one of the instances that kind of, shapes who I am as a person is that when I was 8 years old, my brother was diagnosed with leukemia. And then, I spent a lot of time in Cleveland Clinic, especially like the children's oncology playroom. And then when my brother was 17 and I was 20, he was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy and needed a heart transplant. And at that point, I was already in college. So I had the personal experience and exposure to the healthcare system at a very young age. But how you interpret it as a child versus an adult, completely different. But I do feel that those circumstances with my brother really helped shaped some of what I ended up doing today, but also the care I provided in my profession when I became an adult and had to make some money in social services. So I think without those experiences, I don't know if I would be where I'm at.
Interesting. I'm very sorry, to hear about your brother and, you having to grow up in a hospital, if you will, during his treatments. And, I know that's got to be difficult. I know it's been difficult on my little girl who grew up in a hospital with me for the first, it was, 5 years of her life, going to appointment after appointment after appointment. And she's 13 now. So you can just, those are ages, like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, say, or 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So those are very, very, very important ages where she'll always remember that. And it gives her anxiety. She does struggle with that today. So I can understand when you tell me that. I can see my daughter, in you when you're describing that. And those are memories that are tough, and again, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I do believe it did help mold you, and you learned a lot, as a child, as you didn't probably even begin to understand or know that one day you would be in this medical advocacy arena. So now you grew up, you kind of grew up in a small town, running the streets, like the 80s and 90s, drinking out of water hoses, just good life growing up. And I miss those days. I really do. I grew up in Southern California. We were out until the street lights came on, throwing a baseball all the time, stickball here and there, walking the train tracks, running the canyons. And it's like today, it's like kids don't really go out and play anymore. So when you say, drinking out of a water hose and, playing outside and just playing hide and go seek and all that, I mean, it really does bring me back to those nostalgic days. So
it does. We all need to go back to that. It's okay to be an adult and go act like a kid every once in a while. We all need to do that. Get back to some of our kind of childhood roots, because we leave that stuff behind as an adult. And I feel like that's such a really kind of bad sacrifice We start adulting and we forget the importance of just being in the moment, and doing all that I do. I try to make sure I am being in the moment and doing stuff for myself so that I am refreshed and self-care and I stay motivated, but also it's also to kind of help me focus and think through things and whatnot. So it's okay to be a kid, even as an
Oh,
adult.
of course. Yeah, I'm never going to grow up.
Because you're a Toys R Us kid?
And they don't even have Toys R Us anymore.
I heard they're coming back.
Well,
I heard rumors.
oh,
Don't call it a comeback. Oh man, I'm throwing down some 80s and 90s quick.
Is that Jeffrey? Is it Jeffrey the giraffe? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're dating ourselves. Shh.
So, what inspired you to join the military?
You know, I don't know if it was just it wasn't like I had this epiphany or like aha moment. I just knew I wanted to. And I've known since I was like 15 that I wanted to be in the military. I don't know if it was because, I don't know why. I'll be honest, I originally had planned, my initial plan was to join the Air Force, but that changed. I went into the Army.
Mm-hmm. Did you join the Army right out of high school?
No, I went to college first, and I had joined after I graduated, and I actually chose to go enlisted because my frame of thinking was I thought I was going to be a lifer, and I thought that I will become an officer eventually. But once I become an officer, the fact that I went enlisted, that I felt that these soldiers would have more respect because I'd been, quote unquote, in the metaphorical trenches with them before. Because sometimes with leadership, you shouldn't ask people to do stuff if you're not willing to do it yourself. And so that's just always been my personal mantra. Doesn't mean I'm right, but even when I've been a supervisor with different like social service and human services organizations or nonprofits, I would never do something. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't ask my employees to do something I wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And I would also train my staff, or at least give them some education about how their roles tie into my ability to do my job and how it's a kismet, collaboration of colleagues so that we all can be successful as a team. So that's kind of how I've always approached things. Like, I'm not going to ask someone to do something that I haven't done. Same thing with advocacy. I would never ask someone to call their congressional leader or senator or their state governor if it's not something I've done myself, because that's not fair, right? Mm-hmm. So,
what'd you do in the Army?
Well, I was with the Combat Support Hospital. Originally, I was supposed to do dietary, but I was injured in the line of duty. I had injured my knee and had surgery at Fort Leonard Wood. And then about 6 weeks later, I was in a passenger. I wasn't driving, so I don't want to make any references to any stereotypical jokes about women in driving. But I was in a 2.5 ton military truck, what they call a 2.5, or like a cattle car. And the person driving it was not being very responsible, and it ended up crashing in the ditch. And I ended up sustaining other injuries, which it was a very, very slow snowball, but it is what led to me having to have multiple surgeries over the years, developing fibromyalgia, arthritis, degenerative disc disease. Well, it's not really a disease when they're injured, but that's what they call it medically, and connective tissue disorder. So I had been injured, and because of the nature of my injuries, my unit was like, well, she can't do this job, so let's put her with the medics. No, that's not going to work. We'll put her in personnel, or S1, which is like human resources. Mm-hmm. And I was basically that person that was scrubbing personnel jackets and looking for, basically, if people were behind on training, whatnot, what have you, if they were out of date on stuff, and then I'd have to tell them. So I was like, the messenger of bad news. I'm like, hey, I mean, this is just what's in your personnel file and what needs to be done. But then I was in during September 11th. And at that point, my unit shifted me over to the Tactical Operations Center because of my background, having a degree, whatnot, what have you. So there's stuff in that position, like, I'm not like privy to discuss because a lot of it had to do with security. But, in the height of September 11th, you realize just how delicate military operations can be. And, learning that security is not necessarily like securing the parameters so that they're not breached. It's everything like ensuring your communication lines are maintained. And if they go down, all these other strategies to keep communication lines open, or what happens if there's a biological weapon, how do you contain that? If there's a communicable illness, how do you contain that? Because when you're in a medical support hospital, anything that's contagious, you want it contained because it will take out your whole staff, and then you don't have anybody to treat the soldiers. And so, yeah, there was a lot of strategic planning, for lack of a better term, for a variety of instances that could negatively impact operations of a combat support hospital.
I see. So you would ultimately be medically discharged. And from what I gather, you still went back and you volunteered for the good of the country to help your unit. Is that correct?
It is correct. And it is so a Family Readiness Group Leader. So Army and some other branches might be like, oh, FRG, the coffee chick group. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of seemed to kind of be more of a social thing over the years. But two things, FRG leader, you have to be basically selected and appointed by like your unit and battalion commander, and then they submit it for approval to like the region they're in. And then basically it becomes like a DOD sanctioned position. So I was approved. And what I did was, knowing in light of September 11th that my friends, my family, they were going to get deployed. So what can I do to make things easier for them and their families? So I reinvigorated the FRG, where we were having educational family weekends, like what to expect, prepping for deployment, helping the soldiers get their like legal records together. If, for example, if a soldier is a single parent or a military personnel is a single parent, if they're going to get deployed, they have to appoint someone basically as custodian or guardian of their children while they're deployed. And a lot of times, military personnel don't realize that until they're at their mobilization station. And so I would be bringing JAG in prior to that to explain this and have this squared away so that stressor would be gone. But also, working in social services and having some of that background, a lot of your lower enlisted were struggling. It's not great pay. They might be trying to keep a roof over their family's head, having kids. So I started a food pantry of non-perishable items, where I enlisted the support of the officers to donate canned goods and non-perishable items, and then reaching out to local stores for donations. And then anyone can come in, no questions asked, to get what they need. So, I mean, I wanted it to be a functioning extended arm in support of both the soldiers and families, that before, during, and after deployment. So yeah, and I stayed on another 2.5 years, and I got that up and running. And once I felt comfortable that it would continue in the fashion that I molded it into, I passed the reins. And that's basically was the end of my military career after over 5 years.
I mean, your work is honorable to go back and volunteer, after being medically discharged. But were you able to get some sort of compensation for all the work that you did? I mean, how were you able to keep, food on your table?
Well, I was working full time on top of that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've slept much back then. I mean, it just seems like I was always on the go. I was either working at the unit. With the FRG stuff, it's a lot more flexible than having to be on duty because I'm not on the same military clock. So they all had to be there at, 0600 and I show up at 0900. That's fine. Like there wasn't those issues. So, but the other thing is learning how to work smart versus hard. And basically, again, I'm going to say this word a lot, strategizing to optimize the time in your day so that you're getting the most bang for your buck, metaphorically speaking. So yeah, there was always having a plan and what needed to be accomplished and just start from there and you work off that plan and, get everything checked off as it, comes to fruition and you just move on from that. Very military-like, right?
Right. I like it. Yes. Very, very structured. Very, very structured. Now, you ended up becoming a pain advocate, if you will, after you began to feel the complications of fibromyalgia. What age were you when all this began to happen?
So Cliff Notes version is looking back with 3 different specialists after that military vehicle accident I was in. 3 different specialists, neurologists, pain management, and rheumatologists, all individual from each other at different medical health systems, all concluded that going through my timeline of symptoms, I started exhibit symptoms of fibromyalgia shortly thereafter that accident. But what happened for years and years and years, because that was 2000, August of 2000. But for years, because I had the arthritis and other things, my primary care regular doctors would kind of defer it back to, it's the arthritis, it's your injuries from your knees and your legs, and you're having referred pain. But I was just kind of like, so does this stuff cause me to have at the time, I didn't know it was this, but brain fog or migraines or, just these other unexplained symptoms or cluster of symptoms that didn't tie in to my injuries or arthritis or whatnot, what have you. As time went on, my symptoms slowly progressed and I really started to see a major kind of pivot in 2010, where my gallbladder started to not function right. I had to get that removed. And then I would just have all these onslaught of weird medical instances that just made no sense. And it really wasn't until 2014 when I was officially diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I was having all these symptoms for 14 years. In 2007, it was put on my radar by rheumatologist at Kaiser Permanente, but it wasn't really this stamp, this is what you have. This is what I think it could be this, it's one of those conversations. So it wasn't until 2014 that I got the official diagnosis. And I said, okay. And, military, it's once we have that concrete answer, then it's okay, divide and conquer. How are we going to address this? And so I steamed ahead, The problem was there wasn't really any specialists specializing in fibromyalgia. There was a lot of antiquated or archaic, very old information of fibromyalgia. There was just no need or urge for researchers or medical facilities, pharma to really investigate this illness and discover the root causes, the etiologies, the intersectionality between the symptoms and other conditions. So I had a hard time finding a doctor who not only accepted the diagnosis, but was willing to investigate with me and work as a partner to address my overall health and manage my symptoms. And I realized with all of my background and all of my skill set and my almost entire life, at one facet or another, either personally, professionally, being in healthcare systems, if I was having problems, what is someone without my background knowledge or tenacity? What are they facing? What are the obstacles they're coming up against? And so that's when I was like, you know what? I got to start talking. I got to start advocating. I got to start letting people feel validated and supported, and share my knowledge and skill sets with people so that they can become their own self-advocate to get the healthcare that they needed. So that's where it started.
Yeah. So I kind of want to recap a little here before we start to really dive into the advocacy efforts. But I wanted to mention too that the doctor said, I think it's fibromyalgia. And, there's a lot of people out there that say fibromyalgia is real, and no, fibromyalgia is not real, and this and that. And a lot of what I've read out there on it for years now, actually since we've been good friends, is that I think people are afraid of what they don't understand. And, perhaps they are afraid of what they don't know. And for our listeners out there, can you explain what fibromyalgia is?
Sure. So to preface it, in 2015, October 1st, 2015, the International Classification of Disorders and Diseases reclassified fibromyalgia as a neurological condition. Still in this day and age, in 2022, we don't know what kind, but that was a huge shift and move forward. So we know that there is roots in the neurological system. And there seems to be so your brain's the motherboard, and your spinal cord is middle management, relaying the messages to your nerve endings, right? And the brain sending out the message, middle management, your spinal cord is being a jerk and telling the wrong message. And then your nerves and everything else are running around trying to put out fires and whatnot, what have you. And this is all happening internally. So we know it's a neurological condition. It interferes with your internal bodily systems. We know that there's neural inflammation in the glial cells or glials, whatever. I can never pronounce it. In the brain, there's small nerve fiber damage in people with fibromyalgia and all these other physical things, but you can't see it. It's all invisible, unless if I'm in a flare-up or something and people can be like, oh, she's not doing so good today. So we know it's neurological in basis. And then there's all these symptoms that come about because our neurological system is in disarray, and then it can cause, we have pain all over our body, and it's all different types of pain. It's not just, oh, my muscles hurt. We have nerve pain, and then we have chronic fatigue, which is very pervasive, which creates its own level of muscle weakness and pain, and migraines or tension headaches, have some GI stuff going on. A lot of people with fibromyalgia end up developing IBS. So you're in this constant battle with all these symptoms. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, is this fibromyalgia or is this one of the secondary conditions that really is common with fibromyalgia? So when you're speaking to medical providers or just a regular person on the street, it could be very overwhelming or hard to understand how a condition can cause all these things, but look completely normal. And that was a huge stigma to break, is that, invisible illnesses are invisible for a reason, because everything's happening on the inside. So you have chronic fatigue, brain fog, constant chronic pain in all four quadrants of your body. Those are the top three things that a lot of people with fibromyalgia, will express discontent with. It's a nice way of putting it.
So you got this at an earlier age. You start going to the doctor. Doctors are like, they're just practicing. We think it's this, we think it's that. You couldn't find, you really didn't see it out there. There's not really a blueprint for a doctor or a provider to effectively take care of me. And I know there's more of me out there. So what I'm going to do as Kristal Kent is I'm going to develop my own advocacy. I'm going to create a voice for the voiceless out there who get the runaround on this disease that is called fibromyalgia. Now, at what time in your life, where were you when this inspired you to say, you know what, this is it. I'm going all in on this, and I am going to become a medical advocate because I couldn't get the help I need. So I'm going to ensure that not only is fibromyalgia heard, and it's heard of at, to the highest levels in Congress, as well as your everyday hospitals and clinics across the country.
So a turning point was, well, like I said, I started sharing and speaking because I knew that if I was having difficulties, other people with fibromyalgia or chronic pain conditions were having the same like barriers and obstacles. But a turning point was, and at the time I was married, and there were things that it was like my ex-husband would totally validate that I was sick. And he would tell people, he's like, she'll be fine 1 minute. And then like next minute, she's down and out for the count. Like she was knocked out by like Mike Tyson. But in the same instance, he would do a lot of gaslighting or kind of manipulation. Like I wasn't good enough to be with him. Just all these kind of things because you couldn't always see the symptoms. And the frustration of how much money was going out of pocket to investigate it medically, despite having really great insurance. So it was one of those, instances where I'm like, okay, if people really in my inner circle aren't getting it, and I'm spending thousands of dollars a year, despite having really great insurance plus VA healthcare, something has to be done because this leads to a lot of inequities. And I can't imagine someone who might be struggling financially and not have the means that I have to access things. So it was really around that time, like 2015-ish, that I felt propelled, to do this. And a lot of it was based on, I can advocate, but that's saying, you could feed a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach him how to fish, they can eat for life. So I thought I can advocate on a policies and systems and legislative level, but also on an individual level and share my knowledge and information to help other people so that they can learn the best practices to advocate for themselves. And then the other thing is bringing this community together so that they can be a voice and really promote awareness, because fibromyalgia was not on the map when I was living with it, undiagnosed, and then officially diagnosed. It really wasn't on the map. No one really understood it. You didn't see commercials or read articles. So that was kind of where I had a turning point. And I was like, I can do something that not only, may make things better for myself, but I can share my knowledge and insight and hopefully make things better for other people as well.
Did you ever have a triggering event that puts you on the path that you are on now? Again, into becoming not only a local advocate, but a national advocate that you have, thousands of followers nationwide and really around the world of people that actually suffer from this pain condition that look to you for inspiration and for determination and for resources. What triggered you? What was that triggering event that said, I'm all in? This is going to be my life. My life is going to be medical advocacy. It's going to be fibromyalgia advocacy. I'm going to give the voiceless a voice.
So I'm not going to say that there's this aha moment. I just, like my mom, she's always, she'll be like, Crusader Kristal, She always got to fight for the underdog. Ever since I was a kid, I was like that. It's just how I am, how I'm cut, it's just how I've been. And honestly, some of that does go back to my brother being sick, because imagine in the 80s, you have leukemia as a child, and the chemo makes you thin, it makes you fat, it makes you thin, it makes you fat, then you're bald, and you're 5, 6, 7 years old. You're being bullied because of how you look. And I'd have to go down to the bus stop or the end of the street to meet my brother to ensure like the neighborhood kids weren't going to make fun of him because of how he looked, or trying to beat him up, or and that's a sad instance in that situation, is how cruel kids can be when they don't understand. So this drive to, I guess, right the wrong. I mean, I've always had a very strong moral compass. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm highly flawed. But with certain things, I'm on the straight and narrow. And I've always been like that since I was young. So there's not been like this pivotal moment or trigger or aha epiphany that says, this is what I'm going to do. And I just knew it had to be done. And I felt like I've been doing advocacy and this sort of stuff my whole life. It only makes sense to parlay my skill sets, experience into advocating, in the fibromyalgia and veteran space as well. So I don't know if I don't feel like I really necessarily answered your question, but.
Well, I'm just, looking for that. Like for me, when I began to advocate, my life was destroyed, didn't have any other options. And that was my triggering event was that final VA decision letter that pretty much destroyed my life, stripped me of my right to due process, and put me on a mission to change a law. And I didn't know if you had an experience like that, to where you were at a doctor or at the hospital and they said, we don't know what you got. We don't know how to treat you. This is a new thing that's going on. And I mean, there had to have been at some point, a lot of frustration, because, what I've seen is a lot of these people that do suffer from this pain related illness is that they are very frustrated. They feel like they're all alone on an island. They feel like they're helpless. They feel like they're hopeless. And when they're getting ignored by their own doctor, that right there is cause for concern. So like I was saying, I'm not, trying to put you into a question that you can't answer. I was just curious on it, if there was something out there that really wanted you, dead set on this mission, because you got a great voice, and you're a great advocate.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, for those who know me, and for your audience, how you and I first met, and this kind of just ties into, your question is, I hit you up one day. Your story was put on my radar many years ago. And I just kind of sat back and I observed, because a lot of people say a lot of things. You say whatever you want. Words aren't action. And I said, okay. I'm like, this dude, he's all about action. And I observed, and I was, sharing your posts and commenting, and then seeing what you're doing. I'm like, okay, he's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk. I'm like, respect. And then I hit you up, I think on Facebook or whatever. And I said, so listen, buddy, you don't know me. I'm some chick from Cleveland, but I'm going to help you. And you're probably like, who is this big personality? Like, I'll be loud. I'll be your megaphone. Whatever you need, we'll make it happen. And that's the whole thing. I've always been this whole, when there's an injustice, I want to try to address it. And I've been like that since a child. I've been like that when I was working professionally. I was like that in the military. I am like that now. And it's just ingrained in my personality. Now, again, going back to being a kid, but also working with individuals with intellectual disabilities, mental health, working with veterans, I was out on the streets. Like, people think I was sitting pretty in this little office and patients were coming. No, I actually was out in the community and some really, really rough neighborhoods. Like, if you're ever in Cleveland, I dare you to walk through East Cleveland anytime on any given Tuesday at 5:00. that's where, I mean, it's a rough neighborhood. They call it the jungle. I have family and friends that are police officers. They're like, if you think someone's approaching your car at a light, just take off. Like, bad neighborhoods. And I've seen some stuff like people like shootings, and one person got murdered, and just, this was things that I was seeing every day with my work and just whatnot, what have you. And so I've always just been that person to, say, hey, you can lean on me until you can stand. And that's just how I've been. And I imagine that the world would be a better place if everybody just took that position in life. And so, again, for me to move forward with the advocacy I do, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I can make a difference or I can change this. It was just people need to be heard, and people's stories matter. And when you start being open and raw and sharing your experiences and then coming together as a team or as a group or as a community working towards specific goals, you'd be shocked how much of change can happen for the better. And that's kind of how I came your way. And it was like, you don't know me. I'll be this loud megaphone, whatever you need. I'll go in like, a bulldog in a china shop, whatever you need. That's what I'm here for. So
yeah, no, you did a phenomenal job. You did a phenomenal job, and we wouldn't have gotten where we are, without you. And so, I'll always have a special place in my heart, for all the work that you did. I mean, your voice is truly remarkable.
It's loud. You could just say it's loud. I'm loud. I'm heard. I make myself heard in a diplomatic way, but I make myself heard. I am not shy about that. And maybe that's really my key asset is I'm going to say what needs to be said. I'm not shy about it. If I got to say it in front of Congress, Senate, or a room of strangers, whatever needs to be said to, push an initiative forward, then so be it. And if that makes me a bad guy or makes people uncomfortable, and like I said, I don't see things in a way that's not diplomatic or respectful, and I try to explain things so that everyone understands. But yeah, if you need that person, that's who I am.
So I want to get the most out of this show, because we have, this is a 1 hour show, and I want your people, your followers, your fellow advocates and your fellow fibro warriors. I think, what you guys call them, your team. I want this to be geared more toward them. And they look to you as a leader, as their leadership, as their mentor. What's it like living with fibromyalgia?
Oh, so living with fibromyalgia, you never know day to day what it's going to be like. You don't know how you're going to feel when you wake up. You can have plans to do stuff and your body can say, yep, sorry, not today, not happening. The other thing is, it can be frustrating because other people don't understand, including people closest to you. Even sometimes having a conversation can be trying or embarrassing because you have brain fog and we can't think of words, or, we have a hard time kind of like, cultivating a discussion where we don't sound like we're drunk for the best way to explain it. And people who are close to me, they know, like, they'll be like, oh, she's having brain fog, so they'll give me a minute. So yeah, it's like, when it comes to brain fog, it's like your brain is trying to interpret and respond to the world with like an opaque film around it. So someone without brain fog can see like all the details and all the colors and smell all the, smells and whatnot. And like having brain fog, it's like it's muted. And yeah, you're expected to respond as if someone who doesn't have brain fog. So there's that barrier. Then it's like you got to try to show up for things and you are feeling nauseous, you're having vertigo. Obviously, constant chronic pain is every day, all day. Sometimes we don't even get, respite when we're sleeping, or it wakes us up, or it keeps us awake.
Mhm.
You have that chronic fatigue. So you're wrestling a whole plethora of symptoms and then trying to get people to understand. And a lot of times you don't feel supported or invalidated. And it's kind of like, there's a lot of us. And if we come together and just, for as tired as we are, as in much pain as we are in, if we work as a team, as a community, as a tribe, as a family, and we speak in unison, what a beautiful chorus that will be, because we'll be able to bring about systemic changes, or, systems changes for the better for us, and address these systemic issues. So yes, I do a lot of advocacy. It is very hard. A lot of times people see what I post on social media, but don't understand that it took 100 phone calls to accomplish that one thing. Right. On behalf of people with fibromyalgia, especially veterans living with fibromyalgia or chronic pain. But the other thing is realizing that you're stronger together. And when you build that community and you're authentic and genuine, and they know that you care, they're going to show up for you when you ask them, hey, can you call your senators? Can you do this? So that's the whole thing. Is a lot of times I know a lot of people say, oh, Kristal did this, or you're doing this, or you were, the catalyst in a positive way for this. But ultimately, it's like we're a totem pole, and my community is holding me up. So yeah, I might be leading the charge, but it is not without a lot of support from other fellow advocates, both within fibromyalgia and other spaces, but also my followers and friends and supporters. So when you're going through a day of fibromyalgia, if it wasn't for all those supports and colleagues and collaborations, I don't know if I'd be where I'm at without that, because of how the symptoms really interfere with your daily living.
How do you manage your pain and still carry out a productive life? Because that's probably the number one question with, a lot of people that suffer from this rare disease. And, there are a lot of people out there that do have this. And that's probably one of the number one questions. Is it's very painful. So how do you manage it? How do you prepare? Is there something you need to do in advance to help structure your day, to help structure your week, to help structure your month? So at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you aren't left with all this stuff that went unchecked because you had to do this kind of at your own pace. Can you describe what it's like to put forth all the effort to have that that life of productivity?
Well, and I will tell you, kind of piggies back to when I talk about strategy. It's all strategy. It's all time management. It's all organizational skills. And yeah, a lot of that I learned from the military, but I also learned that professionally working, in social services, where you're having to juggle multiple clients and patients. Sometimes you have 50 on your caseload and you have to get everything done in a timely manner. So your life, it's basically scheduled out. And so that's how I do it. I take things, a lot of people, give an example. The Team Fibro informational interviews, I put 12 of them out in 2022, right? Team Fibro Reloaded. The thing of it is, I started working on that. I came up with the idea of June 2021. And then I pitched it to one of my veteran Voices for Fibromyalgia team members and video and content editor, Al Noblock. I said, I have this vision. And that's how I work. A lot of people think I just drop these things, like I created overnight. No, it's strategic planning months out. Same thing with advocacy and looking at, okay, this is the first step. We're going to see if we can get, a senator or Congress leader to be our champion to increase funding for fibromyalgia research. So a lot of it is planning. If I did not plan, I would be crashing all the time. So yeah, you have to accommodate your illness, and really anyone with any chronic illness, not just fibromyalgia or chronic pain, any illness, whether visible or not, cancer, lupus, MS, PTSD, Gulf War illness, your life becomes a planner around your illness, everything. So you have energy pennies, and you have so many pennies per day. And how many pennies am I going to use? How many energy pennies am I going to use going to this doctor's appointment?
I know you've been involved in the fibromyalgia community for quite some time, and you are very, very well known in that community, and very well respected as well. Do you have perhaps a rewarding experience that you would like to share with us as being a part of all these, advocacy groups, within the fibro community?
So, and this, it's not going to be bells and whistles, but, it's one of those things. A lot of people, they want to stop telling their story, or they want to stop using social media to emote change because they don't feel like they're getting anywhere. Or they want to quit trying to do like legislative or policy advocacy. And I'm like, don't quit, because you will get this message one day that's going to knock you off your feet. And I get messages. And that is what really matters. And, I've seriously had, even recently, like individuals with fibromyalgia and veterans who were suicidal. And literally I had one gentleman, and this was probably about 6 months ago. And he told me he had planned everything out. He was a veteran with fibromyalgia and other chronic pain conditions. He had everything planned. He had his family squared away. He was like, I'm done. I'm checking out in life. Like, I just, can't anymore. And for some reason, he took a step back, went on social media, started scrolling. And for some reason, I came up in his newsfeed. And I know everyone that follows me. It might seem hard, but I know I know everyone on all of my social media sites. I recognize, and, I noticed this gentleman was following both my Fibromyalgia Pain Chronicles and veteran Voices for Fibromyalgia on all sites that I was on with those. And then one day I got a message from this gentleman, and he was very forthright and told me that he had planned his suicide. He could not take the pain anymore. He couldn't take the fibromyalgia. He also had PTSD, felt he was letting his family down. And he said, but even though I had it all planned out and it was supposed to happen according to his plan that night, he decided to go on social media. And I popped up on his radar. And he was like, I tell my family, you saved my life. Like, I'm trying not to get glassy-eyed because this is why I do it. And these are these moments that you don't see publicly. Yes. I have received recognitions and awards from different organizations, entities, governors, state representatives, whatever. I could throw that all in the fire. I don't care. That message, that I made a difference in one person's life simply by speaking my truth and empowering people, making them feel validated and supported. At the end of the day, that's what matters. That's what matters.
Yeah, and
yeah, and I do get messages like that. That's not just the only one. And I'm literally blown away. Like, sitting down, don't know what to say. Like, the breath has been knocked out of me. And I've had that happen so many times over the years. And sometimes I forget, because those are moments. I have moments where I'm like, oh, am I really making a change? Or, as you know, and you and I with the tally bell going back and forth, it's very hard. People don't understand how hard it is to do legislative advocacy, especially when you're like this lone horse with a small group of people trying to emote a really huge change. And people don't understand the monumental success, like the tally bill, or even some of the legislative advocacy stuff that I've done. They really don't know. And
it's exhausting. Yeah, it's absolutely exhausting.
It is.
And, it is something I don't recommend. And that's why I wrote a book. I didn't choose this job. It chose me. And I think you fit into those same shoes. Now, I know we're about five minutes from wrapping this. And I still have some very important stuff that we need to get out there. And piggybacking what you were just talking on about that veteran that reached out to you in his weakest and most vulnerable time in need, and he found you, and you were his angel, his gift, his lifeline, and you help prevent tragedy. Now, for everybody else out there right now that may be listening to this program that feel like that they've been, abandoned, or left behind or forgotten, what advice can you give them, Kristal?
Find your tribe. Come be rogue with me or with Brian Talley. The thing of it is I'm not saying that it's easy to get out of those deep, dark holes. It's not. Mm-hmm. But we have to kind of forget this idea that the people that we think are supposed to have our back isn't necessarily going to be that circumstance, because major life changes your tribe. So you got to find your tribe. Find someone who resonates with you, who you find authentic and genuine. I'm not talking about going out and finding some guru like Jay Shetty.
I like that. Find your tribe. You are from Cleveland.
I am.
Find your tribe. The tribe.
Yeah.
The Cleveland. I love it.
But it's when you look at communities, mm-hmm. everybody's important in that community. We're all equals. And sometimes we think our community is the one that has been with us until the onset of illness or chronic pain. And that isn't necessarily the case. And that's where you have to reconcile yourself mm-hmm. and the situation and understand that some relationships are temporary, mm-hmm. and some are going to be a quick blip on your radar. And then some you're going to come into new ones who are really going to meet you where you're at. And that's the whole thing, is that find mentors, and social media is a great place. It can be toxic, but there's a lot of great people on social media in different advocacy and awareness roles. Like if you Google fill in whatever, and it'll pop up on the search bar, like on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and find those people that resonate with you, but also find ones that make you laugh. There's tons of advocates out there who are hilarious. I have my moments of humor every once in a while when I let my hair down, but that's the whole thing. And understanding that not everyone's going to be your cup of tea. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And that's quite all right, because
what do you mean?
I prefer coffee. I'm just saying that when you're looking at your circumstances in life, and when your circumstances change, or a cup of water, when circumstances change, sometimes the people around you and the support system around you has to expand and change with it as well. So, and that's the best advice, is that mm-hmm. sometimes you have to look within the community mm-hmm. that is experiencing what you're experiencing to get that connection, because at the end of the day, no one can truly understand what it's like unless if they're in your shoes or experiencing something similar, because everybody's experience is unique. So
you got to surround yourself with like-minded people. And, like you said, find your tribe, and, learn to lean on each other and support one another, and, work toward a common goal, and that's to ultimately win. Always, in whatever term you want to look at that with. But in closing, Kristal, how can people connect with you?
They can find me on social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the Fibromyalgia Pain Chronicles, and or Veteran Voices for Fibromyalgia. So I do both on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. I am on TikTok. I do some advocacy stuff on there. Some of it's more comical, but a lot of dog stuff. My dogs are involved in a lot of advocacy initiatives, but on TikTok, it's keeping it real with Kristal. Because sometimes I'm going to just say things when it comes to chronic illness or life, just be direct in a diplomatic way. But sometimes you got to say stuff that, you just got to say it.
Well, Kristal, we are honored, that you have joined our program today. And I know that you have added some some good real life value to the lives of others out there. And for you guys out there right now that want to connect with Kristal on a personal basis to learn a little bit more about advocating and how to get involved in your own community, please reach out to her. She's an excellent lady, and she'd be more than happy to help you with that. So thank you for joining us today, Kristal.